On today's show, the Capitals make it three in a row. Three losses in a row, that is, as they fall to the Buffalo Sabres by a score of 8-5.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme. I've covered the Capitals for the last 3 seasons for Locked On and various other outlets before that. I'm also the host of the weekly show called The Capitals Minutecast, available wherever you find your podcasts. And as always, I want to thank you for making this your first listen of the day. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we talk about why does Chris Patrick and Spencer Carbery have such a great working relationship. You take a look at it, that Spencer Carbery's career has grown by leaps and bounds with his time with the Capitals. And Chris Patrick, the young new GM of the Capitals, what is their history? I'll talk about that a bit later. I'll talk about Cole Hutson and how he's knocking it out of the park at the NCAA tournaments. But just to get it going here, the elephant in the room, and that is your favorite team in mind, the Capitals, as they have dropped their third game in a row. We know there was that overtime loss to Winnipeg. Then there was a loss to the Minnesota Wild. And today, on Sunday, a loss to the Buffalo Sabres. And this is the hard part as we dig into this whole thing here, is that on paper, there is no reason why the Capitals should not have played well against the Minnesota Wild and the Buffalo Sabres. I mean, the Winnipeg Jets, I get that. They're a really, really great team. But at least as far as, like I say, on paper, the Capitals should have easily taken care of the Buffalo Sabres. But to be clear here, historically here, at least recently, the Capitals have struggled against the Sabres. And I guess one of the things that has me the most concerned is I think, up until recently here, we were kind of just riding high, just in this bubble, in a vacuum, thinking that all is well in the world of the Capitals. And I don't want to take any deep dives into any negativity pools here, but as a Capitals fan, you do have to be a bit concerned. Logan Thompson giving up 8 goals. And I understand that it wasn't squarely on his shoulder. And then you take a look at the Capitals. While they outshot the Buffalo Sabres as far as shots on goal, they still lost the game. And, the Buffalo Sabres, they were stealing the puck away from the Capitals a lot. So there is a lot to clean up. So let's do that. Let's dive into the latest here with the Capitals, like I say, as they lost their third in a row, dropping 8-5 at home. Unacceptable, I guess I'm going to say. And one of the things I'll say about the Buffalo Sabres, just giving credit where credit is due, a lot of young, great players on that team. And if you are an everydayer of the show, I've said for the longest time that I see that team being good in years to come. Said it the last couple of years, it hasn't come to fruition yet, but in a lot of ways, it reminds me a bit of the Ottawa Senators, a team that has been on the rise for years and years and years, and now kind of rising to the surface a bit more here. But talking about, despite outshooting the Sabres 29-23 and showing some promise on the PP with 1 conversion out of 2, the Capitals faced some real challenges. And you take a look at the highs in the game. There were a lot of highs, and I'll get into those later in the game. But the deeper dive into the analytics, that is what has me the most concerned. Buffalo, they really took control in the faceoff circle, winning 52.8 out of draws, which gave them an upper hand throughout the game. The Sabres defense was impressive as well. This is why they won the game, or one of the reasons, blocking a significant number of shots and forcing the Capitals into 13 turnovers, while Buffalo only had 7. Those are the things to point to. It's easy to say, well, it wasn't their day or this or that. No, the analytics show what they show. And in a lot of the different metrics, the Buffalo Sabres outplayed the Capitals. And that doesn't seem like a crazy thought, as if you look at the score sheet, it was 8-5 at the end of the game. But tough. and seeing the Minnesota Wild game in person, it looked a bit disjointed. So it's definitely something the Capitals are going to have to drill down on and figure out in a hurry, as we have 2 games coming up here quickly against the Bruins, against the Hurricanes, which, let's be honest here with the Bruins, they're fighting to play spoiler at this point. In Carolina, they want to do what they can do to rise in the standings as much as possible, or accumulate as many points as they possibly can, rather. But it was a rough day for puck management for the Capitals. So in this particular scenario, usually I like to say, do you want the good news or the bad news first? I started off with the bad news. Let's talk about the bright side. Alex Ovechkin added to his legendary career here in the scoring, notching his 890th goal. We thought there was going to be goal number 2, but that was actually a deflection by Pierre-Luc Dubois. So Alex Ovechkin is only 5 goals away from breaking Gretzky's record. That is something that, we can walk away from this more than anything, because one of the things that we know is the Capitals for sure are making it to the playoffs. They have that spot clinched. And the icing on top is Alex Ovechkin notching almost 2 more goals. Jakob Chychrun as well. We know he signed that huge contract here recently here, and he had scored number 19 and 20 in this game. Career highs for Jakob Chychrun in the goal scoring department. 20 goals already on the season. Aliaksei Protas as well, growing by leaps and bounds, now in the 30-goal club. So a lot of excitement as far as, if that was the news and if that was the headline, Chychrun 2 goals, Alex Ovechkin scored a goal, Aliaksei Protas, you'd be walking away thinking like, wow, the Capitals just really took care of the Sabres. But then, widen the lens and get the full total of it. It was tough. Now, defensive struggles. Defensively, it was tough sledding for the Caps as they struggled to contain Buffalo's young and dynamic offense. Again, it's one of the things, we've seen here recently that Winnipeg struggled against the Sabres, and now the Capitals, 2 of the best teams in the NHL, struggling against the lowly Sabres. It's interesting. And like I say, I would not, as long as the Buffalo Sabres can retain some of their players, I think they're going to be really good, maybe even next year. And one of the key players on that team, if you're not familiar with, get familiar with, is Tage Thompson. It was particularly lethal, scoring 2 power play goals. So quite a player on the Buffalo Sabres there. He's not the only one, but that is one of the marquee names on that team. And Chychrun did tie the game at one point in the second period, but the Sabres responded quickly and never looked back. That was the tough part. Ovechkin scoring that goal, and then we thought he scored that second goal that was actually PLD's goal, and you're like, here we go. It's going to happen. The Capitals are going to stage this rally and have a comeback. Wasn't the case. It was definitely the agony of defeat for the Capitals. And one guy that let us down. And, again, I talked about the defensive miscues and this and that, so it doesn't rest squarely on his shoulders, but Logan Thompson had a really, really bad night in net, or afternoon in net, as he allowed 8 goals. So something that he would like to have turned around as well. He, let's see here, allowing 7 goals on 22 shots. One was an empty netter, of course. So that was tough. And like I said, the defense in front of him really didn't help his cause. It was kind of almost reminded me of last year's Capitals team, where they kind of, aired the netminders out to dry. But Ovechkin, who returned from a brief benching in the second period, finished with 2 assists. So it was a great afternoon for the Great 8. He's still on fire, scoring 3 goals in his last 7 games, which keeps him right up there among the league's top scores. So quite an afternoon for the Great 8. I was really hoping that it was going to be that second goal, but milestones, like I talked about, Chychrun, the 20-goal mark, Protas 30. Those are the positive moments. If you are a glass half full, or you just want to reside in the positivity, that is the pool you're going to want to jump into, is Chychrun, Protas, Ovechkin. Those were the feel-good vibes from this team. The flip side of that coin, in the negative waters, the swamp, if you will, it is the Capitals dropping 3 in a row. It's tough. And, I guess there's a lot of different ways. Someone hit me up on Twitter saying this is the wrong time for them to go on this losing streak. I mean, yeah, I hear that. If this team should be firing on all cylinders, it should be right now. But thank God, in a lot of ways, it's right now. Had they not clinched it right now, I know there's a pretty good cushion between there. But say this was, a month or two earlier in the season, this could have definitely been a game changer for this team. I think they'll figure it out. And the thing of it is that there's no players out of the lineup right now. There is no injured players, other than Backstrom and Oshie, and we knew all that. But this lineup is as is, that they're going to have to figure it out. This core, this nucleus, as is the group of players that put the Capitals in this position. It is going to be those same players that are going to have to dig the Capitals out of the mess that they're currently in. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about Cole Hutson at the NCAA tournament. A dynamic defender, a guy that will be a game changer for the Capitals in years to come. What's the latest? I'll discuss straight ahead. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. I've got my eye on a few underdogs this year, and FanDuel makes it easy to get back in with the spreads, totals, and game props. With tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something exciting to bet on. So listen, there's a lot of games going on. You're probably not familiar with a lot of the different teams because let's be honest, people don't really care a whole lot about March Madness and college basketball until March, unless you're going to that school. But if you want to have vested interest in all of these games, open up the FanDuel app, put a little bit of money on the games. All of a sudden, they got that much more exciting. So visit FanDuel.com and get on the college hoop action all tournament long. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You can find me over on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. So in this next segment here, let's get hyped. Let's flee away from the negativity of how the Capitals played in the last 3 games, and let's talk about tomorrow, the future, if you will, of the Capitals. And Hutson for the Capitals is lighting it up at the NCAA tournament, and a real bright spot in the future for the Capitals blue line. That is what I know for sure. We know he is that young defenseman, and he put on a show at Boston University's 3-2 overtime victory over Cornell, contributing 2 points with 1 goal and 1 assist. And I got a chance to see a part of this game. And let me tell you something. I believe that Cole Hutson is as advertised. It's an exciting time, as far as this NCAA tournament and some Capitals prospects that are associated with it. If you can pull yourself away from the Capitals coverage and you really love hockey, do yourself a favor and watch these games. That win secured BU's 3rd consecutive trip to the Frozen Four, and Hutson has racked up a total of 6 points, 2 goals, and 4 assists in just 2 games during the regional held in Toledo. He's another guy. He is a blue liner, like Chychrun, I guess, in the regard that he has an offensive flair. And I know there's more defenders, but that is one guy on the Capitals' current roster that comes to mind. But talking about one of the highlights was a stunning bad angle goal just 34 seconds into the second period. And if you didn't see it, let me paint the picture for you here a little bit. Picture this on a power play. Hutson received a pass at the point, skillfully maneuvered it down the left flank towards the goal line and unleashed a powerful shot that found the top corner, leaving a goaltender Ian Shane with no chance. If you want to look that up on YouTube or something, you'll find it. It is quite stunning what Hutson was able to do in that play in particular. But like I say, This isn't Capitals hockey, but this is the Capitals future. And in a lot of ways, that should even have you more excited. Key assist in that game. Earlier in the game, he set up the first goal for the Terriers, assisting Matt Capone. Hutson navigated around a Cornell defender for a perfect zone entry and delivered a pass to Capone in the high slot. Another highlight. Do yourself a favor. Go ahead and see if you can find the whole game. But if you want to look for highlights, that was stunning. But the thing of it is, the Hutson brothers in general, it is a family that knows the game of hockey and excels. Cole's older brother, Quinn, scored the game-winning goal just over 6 minutes into overtime, and together they have combined for 9 points, 4 goals, and 5 assists in their playoff victories over Ohio State and Cornell. So quite something. It's safe to say the Hutsons are making big impact. As far as big picture, what has Cole Hutson put up? If you're not too familiar, you should get familiar if you don't know. On the season, Cole Hutson's 2-point outing has a total impressive 46 points, 14 goals, 32 assists in 37 games. And he is a guy to keep your eye on. He is really shining, especially when compared to his brother Lane, who has points in 6 tournament games, but is tied for the rookie scoring lead in the NHL with Matvei Mishkov with 56 points in 72 games. So the family lineage, the family dynamic, think of the Stahl brothers, for example, that sometimes there's these whole families that come through the system that are just really great. Leonard as well. It's funny that if one brother does well, sometimes the other brothers do well as well. So exciting things for the Capitals. I'm thinking Protas as well. There's quite a few of them if you really start to let it roll around in your head there. But exciting times for the Frozen Four ahead. The Frozen Four is set April 10th to 12th in St. Louis, Missouri. It's a special homecoming for Cole, who was born there, but exciting to see what's going on between Boston College and BU. And exciting in the regards that it doesn't really matter who wins or loses in a lot of ways. You're getting a good chance to see some top Capitals prospects on the big stage as far as the NCAA level is concerned. And in a lot of ways, I hate to say it selfishly, I'm going to say it out loud anyway. I hope that Leonard loses. I hope that Boston College loses and he can join the Capitals sooner than later. And why do I say that? What did we see in the last 3 games here in particular? And I'm not saying that he's going to be the guy that fixes everything, but the goal scoring touch of Ryan Leonard on this team right now is a pretty exciting prospect to think about, seeing the numbers that he's putting up. And Cole Hutson, in my estimation, is a little bit further out, but in the years to come, Hutson, I'm talking Crystal, Leonard, at some point, Miroshnichenko is going to be full go, that this is going to be a truly exciting team to watch. A primarily young, youthful-driven team, which is a bit of a change from what we have seen in previous years. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about Chris Patrick and Spencer Carbery. Why do they have such a good rapport? You take a look at it that we know that Chris Patrick took over the duties of general manager from Brian McClellan, who's still with the organization. But what is the history and why are they so successful? I'll break it all down straight ahead. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. In this final segment here, we're talking Chris Patrick, we're talking Spencer Carbery and their history and why they are a perfect match. And I think a lot of ways why we have seen this team be so successful this year. We know that Spencer was here last season as well, but Brian McClellan was at the helm, and of course, one of the great GMs in Capitals history, but it's all about the here and now. I'm talking Patrick, I'm talking Carbery, and why it is such a successful relationship. That's what we're going to do, talking about Patrick and Carbery in their inaugural season, and I say inaugural and Chris Patrick. They're two, both Carbery and Patrick working together for the first full season. Let me tell you, it's been one heck of a ride so far. And why do I say that? Well, if we want to just talk about the stats, I like to back things up with stats. The Caps are rocking it this season, currently holding second place in all of the NHL with an impressive 47 wins, 17 losses, and 9 OT losses, totaling a solid 103 points. And it's one of the things that, it's a good relationship. I don't know how things are right now. I know that when I was at the Capitals game versus the Wild, I did see Chris Patrick and Brian McClellan were both at the game. And when I was walking out of the game, they both left their office or, their box up top, and they did not look happy. I didn't get a chance to say a word to them. It probably wouldn't have been too good if they had anything to say, but they were not happy, in my estimation, on what they saw out on the ice. But all things considered, I'm talking generalized, I'm talking 30,000-foot view. This team is playing very well. They're not just winning. They rank second in the league with 260 goals scored and have allowed just 185 goals, ranking them as one of the toughest defenses in the league. And all things considered, I know that it was a lopsided game somewhat. I mean, the Capitals still put up some decent goals, but all things considered, the Capitals blue line with Chychrun, with John Carlson, with Roy, with Sandin, these kind of guys that the team, the blue line in general, has been very solid. But what's the history, the origin story? What's really interesting is that this isn't the first time Patrick and Carbery have teamed up. They previously worked together with the Hershey Bears in the AHL from 2018 to 2021, winning the McGregor Kilpatrick Trophy for the most points in the league during the 2020-21 season. And if there's one thing that we know about the Hershey Bears is they have a long history of playing hockey the right way. The Calder Cups titles, the victories, they speak for themselves. And, as far as Chris Patrick is concerned, he was the assistant general manager for the Capitals for a long time. And one of his key duties was the go-between between Hershey and the Capitals, that he had to be well-versed on what is going on with the Hershey Bears organization, development, that kind of thing. And in the process of that, working with Spencer Carbery, I think that rapport sometimes goes a long way. Just like I've talked about the show that, this player came here, Anthony Beauvillier came here, for example, and had a history playing with some different players. And we also know that Dylan Strome seems like he's played with almost every single player in the National Hockey League. That I think sometimes there is a nervous nature, even if you are a professional athlete showing up to a new environment. It's still a lot like a kid showing up at a new school, that there's probably some nerves there. But all things considered, the relationship seems to be working very well. That year was special for Carbery, too, as he took home the Louis A.R. Memorial Award as the AHL Coach of the Year. Spencer Carbery is a guy that has killed it at every single level. He has history with the ECHL, the AHL. He was an assistant with Toronto and has knocked it out of the park, and even last year, some people speak somewhat disparagingly of it, but the Capitals did the unthinkable thing even last year by making it to the playoffs. If we remember all the struggles that they had last year. Now, the transformation of the Capitals has been nothing short of historic. They made a remarkable turnaround this season, due in large part to the additions. It's not all Alex Ovechkin. It's Pierre-Luc Dubois. It's Chychrun, Roy, Mangiapane, Logan Thompson, going from last place in the playoff standings last year to clinching a spot in the playoffs first this year. Talk about a rags to riches story. Not quite rags. The Capitals were never rag quality, but you know what I'm talking about. First for any franchise since 1979-1980 season. And, again, no one saw this coming. Even a guy that hosted, I picked the Capitals in all transparency to finish the season second in the Metro. But in a lot of ways, I love to be wrong in situations like that when the team actually plays better than I had perceived. But Carbery's big thing is team culture. The younger players, the older players, Ovechkin loves Carbery. The younger players, some of them have a history of playing with him in Hershey. It's like the perfect fit. A big part of the success can be credited to Carbery's influence on the team culture. Again, we saw that a bit as well when Barry Trotz was here. The Caps have managed to avoid these lengthy losing streaks. except as of late here, with no stretch longer than 3 games. So they still haven't gone past that, and they've racked up 6 separate winning streaks of 4 games or more. So it's really no surprise that Carbery's already being mentioned as a front runner for the Jack Adams Award. So it's either the Capitals or it's Winnipeg. You know, the coaches there that are involved are the front runners for the Jack Adams Award. But it's the focus on young talent. And that's one of the things that kind of like the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Capitals did it right. It was the reputation around the NHL for a long time that the Capitals are old and slow. And how recently am I talking about? I'm talking last season. That was the reputation that the Capitals, you know, it's Backstrom, it's Oshie, it's Carlson, that, you know, a lot of the players on the team are old. A lot of that changed, and a lot of that changed based on necessity. Backstrom, TJ Oshie both stepping away from hockey. Kuzi terminating his contract, that they had a little bit more money in the piggy bank to go get those younger players. You know, I'm talking Pierre-Luc Dubois, these kind of guys. So, and when I say do it right, take a look at the Penguins. Take a look at the standings. Contrast the difference between the Pens and the Caps. And I guess you can say that, at least in part, that is one of the reasons that I think the Capitals are doing things the right way. But talking about that investment in the youth, Connor McMichael, Aliaksei Protas, under Carbery and Hershey are having a breakout season, showing just how valuable this partnership has been. And I think that it has been one of the missions of Spencer Carbery to welcome Connor McMichael and Aliaksei Protas, the dog bark, those kind of things, that he recognizes the history. And I think that you're getting the best out of Connor McMichael and Aliaksei Protas under this environment. And it's not just Carbs. I think that Pierre-Luc Dubois has played a huge role. I'm talking more specifically about Connor McMichael here. And Aliaksei Protas, I think he is tapping into the player that I think we all knew was in there. He's just playing into his strengths. You see big and strong and you think fighter. Not really. He's got a great skate. He's got a great release, and he can post up in front of the net. He's leaning into his strengths, and confidence is the biggest difference I've noticed in Aliaksei this season. Now, looking ahead, even after Carbery's move to the Toronto Maple Leafs, their winning ways continued, leading to back-to-back Calder Cup championships for the Bears in 23-24. And Patrick, you know, again, this is a perfect situation as well. And I saw firsthand evidence that Brian McClellan and Chris Patrick, they're still at a lot of games together. And at least in Minnesota, which is not exactly a hop, skip, and jump away from D.C., that even on these extended road trips, oftentimes they traveled together. Now, Patrick, who played a pivotal role in Carbery's hiring, and Hershey believes the reunion in Washington was kismet, or meant to be, reminiscent of bringing back a player developed in another franchise. So all things considered, you know, it's the makings of a movie this season. And even if they don't win the Stanley Cup, you know, I think that just everything that has been assembled and put together is nothing short of genius. I'm just going to say it. And, you know, these risky moves that sometimes, you know, GMs, they go out and they go for the marquee names, you know, that and sometimes those don't always pay dividends, right? You see those moves that were made this last summer. Nashville comes to mind, where they went and they acquired a bunch of big name upper echelon players. And how well has that panned out for them? And that's just one team that comes to mind. If you're a baseball fan, the San Diego Padres have done that years after years. And the New York Mets are always going to Met, despite the fact they have Juan Soto. So sometimes it's having good scouts. It's about having the ability to see diamonds in the rough. And I guess I don't want to put Pierre-Luc Dubois in that category exclusively, but let's be honest, a lot of the NHL was pretty down in the dumps on PLD. Brian McClellan and maybe perhaps Chris Patrick had a hand in it and said, I think I see something in that guy. I know it was just a blip on the radar in LA. You know, and historically, like I said, we've seen that with Conley and Devontae Smith-Pelly, these kind of guys, that the Capitals organization, the leadership, the scouts, the people that make the big time decisions, they have an excellent ability to find players that have great strength and can get the most out of them. And if they can't, they do the right thing and they move on from said players. See Evgeny Kuznetsov, for example. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Capitals. And I want to thank all of you that listen on the audio side and watch this on YouTube You are what makes this show successful. When you're done here, head on over to Locked On NHL, as they have you covered 5 days a week, covering all of the NHL, available wherever you find your podcasts and on YouTube. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.